everyone, this is Sue Reynolds representing the American Student Achievement Institute, and we are getting ready for our second steering team training and our first webinar. The focus of this webinar is to prep for your first council meeting, where you will be talking with your council about what is RSC and then also school counseling benefits. So using the GoToWebinar system, you'll see on your screen a control panel. There's three parts of the control panel that I'd like to bring to your attention. One is if you click that little orange arrow, that will minimize the control panel, and then you can click it again to bring it out to the maximum view. I'm going to have everybody on mute. If you'd like to talk, you can click that little hand icon, and that will let me know that you would like to speak, and so I'll unmute you on my end. And then in the bottom part, if you'd like to type in a question or a comment, you can type that in, and then I'll be able to see that. So we are recording this webinar. We love it when people participate live because then you can ask questions as we go. We think that's especially important for the person who will be facilitating your council meetings, for them to attend live so that they can ask questions. So here we are in the process. You've made a lot of progress. You've completed 4 steps already. You put together your steering team, and you've begun recruiting your council. We've been really, really impressed with the work that you've done so far. For most of you, you're on time with your submissions, which is wonderful. I think there's only one school that we haven't received the steering team task assignments from. So that is just super. And then the quality of your work has been really good, which makes us think that you're reading the rubric before you submit work, so you know what we're looking for, and you can kind of check that before you send the work into us for our review. You've also got a really good start on your self-studies. Most of you are complete with those, and you've started logging your counselor time. I think all of you have done that, so that is just wonderful. So in the coming month, what we're going to be working on is the first one of your program foundations, which are the benefits. So in this webinar, we'll be talking about how to hold that first discussion with your council. And then some of you have already received a friendly reminder from us about submissions. So when we are providing support for you, we do that in 2 ways. One, we monitor everything that you're sending to us and send you feedback on that. But the other thing we're monitoring are the submissions that have not come in yet. And if you start to get behind to the point where we're thinking, oh, we need a little friendly reminder to keep RSC on the front burner, we just send you an email that says, these are the things that are past due. Don't forget to be working on them. We're not being critical of you. We've all worked in schools. We know that sometimes it's really difficult with everything else that you're doing to keep RSC moving along. But we also know that it can be very hard to get caught up if you get considerably behind. So we send these friendly little reminders. Sometimes we refer to it as friendly nagging, but it's to help you. So please take it in that sense, that it's not being critical. We're just wanting to make sure that RSC is staying on your front burner. Okay, so when we have these webinars together, this is a typical agenda for the webinars. The first thing we'll do is just spend about 5 minutes talking about the past month. And I'll call on a couple of schools randomly to just give us kind of a state of RSC report. How did their work last time go? Did they have any issues implementing the tasks? Were there big successes that we need to celebrate, or were there challenges that we need to talk through? So we'll ask a couple of schools to do a 1-minute report, but all schools should be prepared for that. So just know that coming into these webinars that we'll call on a couple of schools to share. Then we'll also give you a quick opportunity to ask any questions or make comments about the previous month's activities. So that'll take about 5 minutes, and then we'll walk through the coming month. So we'll walk through the agenda if there's a council meeting coming up. We'll walk through the PowerPoint slides. We'll look at the online system to show you where resources are and also how to document your progress. Then we'll look at the rubric items for the work that's coming in, and of course answer any questions or comments that you'd like to make. So that's a typical agenda. And then for most of our schools, immediately following the webinars, the steering teams will have a meeting. And here's the agenda that we would suggest for your steering team meeting after the webinars. The first question we think you need to talk about is, will we make edits in RSC's process or the materials that we've given you for the coming month? And if there are major edits, who's going to check with RSC to see if those edits are okay, or if we're doing something that's going to get us into trouble later, or that's going to make the work more time-consuming later. So please, if you're making a major edit in the process, especially or in the materials, check with us to make sure that that's not going to be problematic for you later. And then in looking at the upcoming month, the most important thing is who's going to complete each task in the coming month, and then by when. So you're kind of setting up an internal timeline for the coming month on when all the work's going to be done. Okay, so with that said, let's go ahead and start working through our agenda for today. And I'm going to just start by walking through the council agenda, and then I'll move into the counselor PowerPoint slides. Okay, so I'm going to the RSC online system, and this is the first page that you get, the home page for your steering team. Then I'm going to go over here and click on the manual tab. This is where all of the resources for this first meeting will be. So in the manual tab, I'm going to scroll down to the section that says Meeting 1, RSC Intro. And in each of the meeting sections in the manual, we'll have all of the handouts that we're providing for you to share with your council, as well as some behind-the-scenes tools to help you facilitate that council meeting. So the first thing I want to walk through in this is the Meeting 1 agenda. So I'm just going to click on that. That'll bring it into my computer, and we'll open that up. And there we go. And on this, you can see that this is a template. So you can drop in the name of your school here, the date of your meeting. And then this is our suggested agenda. And you'll see over here we have just the word time. We don't know what time you're going to start your meeting. So whatever your start time is, put that in here. And then we've given you our thinking on how long this section would take. So, so we're saying that we think this section would take 30 minutes. So, if you're starting your meeting at 6 p.m., you would write 6 p.m. here. This takes 30 minutes. So the next time would be 6:30. This takes 40 minutes. So the next time would be 7:10. So that's how the agenda works. And you'll notice also in almost all of our agendas, we put a break in the middle. We strongly suggest a 2-hour meeting. We think that if the meetings are shorter than that, it's really hard to go deep with the discussions, especially when we start looking at data, but in this first meeting too, when we're just getting started. So we strongly suggest a 2-hour meeting with a break in the middle. And normally what will happen is that the first half of the agenda will be you sharing information with the council. This month we're going to define all the terminology and kind of introduce what RSC is. In later meetings you'll be presenting data. or presenting information that will facilitate a deep discussion. And then there's break, and then after break we put in that discussion. And we really feel that if you cut this time short, you won't get in depth in the discussion. So our discussion for this time is the first council discussion you'll ever have is the guidance and counseling benefits. And then the product that comes out of this discussion is your guidance and counseling benefits statement. Or your school counseling benefits statement. So that's kind of how our meetings typically run. Sometimes schools make adjustments to our agenda. And again, we give you suggestions, but we don't prescribe exactly how you have to do this work because only you understand your local environment and what is going to work best in your local environment. So one of the common things that some schools, not a lot, but some schools will do is they'll take this 2-hour meeting and they'll divide it into 2 1-hour meetings. So the first meeting, they'll just share information. And then the second meeting, they'll have the discussion. So there's a couple of downsides to that. One is that in the first meeting, all you're doing is talking at people. It's a sit and get. It doesn't engage your council. And we find that when the council is not engaged, it's more difficult to get them back to the next meeting. So even though you've told them, okay, at the next meeting it's going to be all discussion, they're thinking, oh man, all I did was sit here for an hour. So, something to think about with that. Then the other thing, the other problem with this is that in that second meeting, what normally happens is that the facilitator has to go back and review what they did at the previous meeting. And so instead of getting a full, 40 minutes to an hour of discussion here, you're getting, maybe just a half an hour and the discussion doesn't go deep. So we understand that the upside of that is that people aren't, having to come for 2 hours, but we think there's some significant downsides to that. So we'd like you to think about that carefully if you're considering that. Another thing that schools sometimes do is they'll take our PowerPoint in the introduction part and they'll do a voiceover on it talking about each of the slides, and then they'll send that out to council members ahead of time to have them view it before they get to the meeting, and then they go straight to discussion. That, of course, is an option. I think the downside of that is that people don't get to ask you questions as you're going through the content. You don't get the benefit of seeing what people's reaction are face-to-face as you're presenting. So there's some downsides to that too. But that, if you feel like you have to shorten this meeting, that would be one option, to get the content out to people some other way before your meeting. Cross your fingers that they watch the content or read the content before they get to you, and then go directly into the discussion. And I think that's probably another downside is that, if some people don't watch the video that you create, or if they don't read the content that you send out, then you've got some council members that are ready to discuss and other council members that are not ready to discuss. So, that there's some problems with that. Okay, I'm going to go back to the online system. So that's the agenda. Here's the presentation that I'll walk through in a minute. This is just an info page about RSC. It's a one-pager. This is a council roster, and I'd like to open up that and look at that for a second. So the council roster is something that we would suggest that you fill out ahead of time and provide to everybody so that each council member has contact information for all the other council members. We've had schools edit this sheet to take off the email list, or if they didn't feel like they should be disseminating people's email addresses. So kind of, think about that, but I think 99% of our schools just fill this all in. So you would type in, before you give this to people, you would type in people's names, phone numbers, and email addresses of your council members. Then you would send that out to, you'd have a copy there to give to everybody as they come in as part of the handout packet. So the thing I want to talk about is this last column, the perspectives. That you would leave blank. What we are suggesting, and this is a pretty strong suggestion, is that as people are introducing themselves, you ask them to think about what unique perspective did they bring to the table. And so, I may be sitting on your council and I'm thinking, well, I'm the only third grade parent, so I represent third grade parents. Or I may be thinking, I'm the only Hispanic person here, so I represent the Hispanic community. Or I'm somebody from a business in your community, so I could represent the business community. Or I'm somebody from one of your faith-based organizations, so I could represent faith-based organizations. So we want people to start thinking about that they're not just there as an individual, they are there representing a voice. I think that's really important for two reasons. One is that as they're looking around, they realize that there are a lot of different perspectives at the table and that this is going to be a very rich discussion. The other thing that's critically important is we want them to realize that if they don't come back to your second meeting or your third meeting, that voice is missing. So if I'm the third grade parent and I don't come back, there's nobody representing third grade parents there. So that we find is one of the key things for getting people to come back, is that they realize that they're there as a voice, and that that voice will be missing if they don't come back to the other four meetings. Now, the other thing I want to say about these perspectives is that when you invited each of your council members to be on the council, you did so because in your mind they represented a specific perspective. So Jane Doe, the third grade parent, in your mind you might have invited that parent because Jane was a parent of a free and reduced lunch student. But we don't want to put that label on Jane. We want Jane to look for her own group that she represents, her own stakeholder group. So to say that a different way, we don't want to assign a stakeholder group to Jane. We want Jane to come up with her own stakeholder group. And if she says third grade parent instead of parent of a free and reduced lunch student, that's fine. That doesn't matter at all. So, that she has the other perspective, but for her to identify herself a different way, a different perspective, that's absolutely fine. So, okay. And then what you would ask people to do, which will engage them a little bit, is that as everybody's introducing themselves and they're saying their perspective, then each of your council members on their own copy of this roster, they would write down the perspective. So they're having to listen as everybody talks so that they can get that perspective written down on their paper. So just a little bit more engaging. Okay, and go back to the process page. The manual page. That's the council. This is a form that your council members will use to launch into the discussion. I'll look at that in a second. And then we've just given you a template to write your council meeting dates so that you could just type them in there and pass out all the dates and times to your council for the entire year. Okay, I'm just going to walk through quickly the tools. The steering team slides will be in this section, as well as the recorded webinar that we're recording right now. This next document is really important for your steering team meeting. It's how to prep for your first council meeting. So what we do on this form is we tell you, here's the intended outcomes for this discussion. Here's the product that will come out of this discussion that you'll enter into the online system as documentation of the discussion. And then here's a to-do list, secure a meeting room, get your AV equipment, invite your people to attend. There's a whole list there of how to get set up to make this meeting a success. then sometimes we'll have a poster that you'll use to scribe what people are saying as you talk. So here's the poster for that. And then we typically give you we typically give you a sample product. So in this case, there's a sample benefit statement that you can look at. And then finally, tasks following council meeting 1. So those tasks are usually involve things like what needs to be entered into the online system, how, sending out a thank you to your council to let them know how much you appreciate them and hopefully, again, get them to come back to meeting 2. And then also we might give you a couple of tasks to do right away for the next month. So always make sure you're looking at that, and because the tasks that we need you to complete right after your council meeting will always be listed there. Okay, that said, I'm going to go to the intro presentation for your council and just walk through those slides. Oops, there we go. Okay, so here are the slides that we provide for this council meeting. In this case, there's 2 purposes of these slides. One is to introduce RSC, especially the vocabulary, and then the other is to facilitate your first discussion about school counseling benefits. Okay, so the first thing you're doing is welcoming people, introducing yourself, and then you're asking your council members to introduce each other. And then we've got a slide that talks about them identifying the perspective that they're bringing to the table, and there's some examples of different perspectives that they might bring. And then we're talking about, what's the goal of this work? What are we trying to accomplish? So basically, the work that you're doing together will help all students make sound choices in areas that impact their social-emotional health, their academic success, and their career success. So, and again, I really emphasize what we're doing is going to help kids make good choices. So here's some examples, and I would read through this all. I just name a couple in each area. So a social emotional choice might be to resolve conflicts peacefully or report bullying. An academic choice might be to ask questions in class or turn in homework. Career choice might be to explore careers online or participate in job shadowing. So just really quick on this. And one other little idea is that if there are sound choices that you believe are an issue in your school already, you could use this slide to kind of introduce that by putting those choices in that you would like your council to just kind of be thinking about, putting them in as some of these sample choices. So we're just kind of planting a seed here. We're not, saying this is what you should do, but if it's something you want to get on people's radars right away, you could just put that in as a sample choice. Okay, now the next thing we need to do is to define what is school counseling. What do school counselors do? And for almost all of your council members, they won't have a clue. They might have been in a school that didn't have a counselor. They might have had a counselor that wasn't a stellar counselor, and they just don't know what counselors do. So basically, counselors help students make sound choices. And counselors do that in 4 ways. They provide guidance for kids, counseling for kids, they advocate for kids, and they manage their own programs. And then we're just going to define each of these things. So here's the definition for guidance and who provides it. One thing that I think is nice on this slide when we start talking about who provides teaching, that of course it's counselors, but it could be others like parents, neighbors, clergy, businesses. And again, we can kind of introduce on this slide that we might work on this all together. It doesn't have to be just the counselors. We're planting a seed here. For some people, the light bulb will go off and they'll be thinking, oh, my business might be able to help. But we're not going to really visit that option until April or May. So we're just kind of planting that seed here. And then guidance settings, we're just explaining that we can teach kids as, in groups, or we could teach them one-on-one. So 2 different types of guidance settings. Then we're defining counseling. And we're stressing here that counseling is provided by licensed professionals. It's not for all kids, for some kids, and it helps them address a social or personal emotional concern that it's interfering with learning. I like this slide. I think everybody knows that kids have issues, but when you start putting them all up on the screen at once, I mean, here's 21 different issues that kids could be bringing to school that's interfering with their learning. And I think this just kind of gives people a sense that, man, there's a lot of stuff that kids are bringing to school that's making it difficult for them to make good choices. So yeah, I wouldn't spend a lot of time here, but just to, get that up to just kind of emphasize there's a lot of stuff that kids are challenged by. Okay, then advocacy, introducing the idea that, counselors also, as part of their job, to stand up for kids that need someone to stand up for them, and that counselors stand up for groups of kids, and they also can stand up for individual students. And the goal is that all students master rigorous academic curriculum. So when there's a group or an individual kid that needs somebody to stand up for them, that's what counselors do. And then finally, management. Those are the behind-the-scenes tasks that counselors have to do to make their programs run smoothly. Here's the examples. So you can say, program development. That's what we're doing right now. So right now, I'm doing a management task. If you're the counselor presenting this presentation, or if you're not the counselor, if you're somebody in the community, you can say, our counselor right now is doing a program development task. That's a management task. Personal development, networking, and then evaluating the school counseling program. And again, whoever's facilitating this, you can say, for the past month, our counselors have been collecting all kinds of data. It's been incredibly time consuming, but it's important because that's a management task that's going to make our school counseling program better. Okay, and then there are other duties as assigned or non-program tasks. These are tasks that have nothing to do with guidance or counseling or advocacy. They're not helping students learn knowledge that they need to make sound decisions, and they're not helping kids address a social emotional concern. So these are non-program tasks, but they're good tasks. I mean, somebody has to do these tasks to make the school run smoothly. So one of the things that can happen here is if this is the first time your principal has been involved, and that sometimes, or assistant principal or your superintendent or a school board member, sometimes when folks are listening to this, they're thinking, oh my gosh, if the counselor doesn't do these things, who's going to do them? And, I can remember my own school board thinking, what do you mean records are not a school counseling activity? The counselors have always done transcripts and reports cards and grade point averages. So, we had to, acknowledge that, yes, these are good tasks, and it may be that it makes the most sense in our school for our counselor to do these tasks. But as we look at the counseling program, we can make that decision together, and we can look at that together. Okay, so just kind of a heads up on that. Okay, and then the next question that we'll answer for the council is, what results will we see? I think this is really important. Everybody is starved for time. And if your council doesn't believe that there's going to be a good outcome that comes from the time that they donate to your initiative, they're not going to come back to your next 4 meetings. So we need to help them understand that because of the time that they're donating, there will be good things that happen. So the primary result, the primary good thing is that we're going to help kids. We're going to increase the percentage of students who make targeted choices, sound choices, and because of the choices that those kids will begin making, we'll have an increased number of students succeeding academically. So this is all about the time that they're donating is all about helping a higher percentage of students succeed academically, and we're going to do that by designing a school counseling program that will help more kids make better choices. So that's the primary result. The secondary result is that our school will be recognized by the American School Counseling Association, School Counselor Association for being a model program. So, but I'd really emphasize that the primary purpose is to help kids. When I'm thinking about what will most engage your council members, it's going to be helping kids rather than helping counselors get an award. So I'd really focus on that and just, say just as a secondary thing, that's going to be nice. At the end of all this, we're going to be a model program. But the most important thing is that we're helping kids. Okay, and then the other thing I think is important for your council to understand is that when their work is finished, the program's going to be able to sustain. My guess is some of your council members will be like me, and they're, kind of tired of serving on task forces where they do, lots of work and attend lots of meetings and donate their time, and then at the end of it, nothing's different. So we really want to help them understand that at the end of their work, you're going to have an organizational structure that will allow the whole process to sustain. You'll have evaluation resources in place that will help you evaluate year after year after year. You will continue to have meetings with the council, but it will be an annual meeting for evaluation and redesign purposes. And then you'll also have all of your materials developed that you'll need to continue the program. So we really want your council to understand that this is going to sustain past the 5 meetings that you have with them this year. One of the things I was really pleased with, we just heard from one of our schools who received some of the Lilly school counseling funding. And Lilly wrote in response to an annual report that the district turned in, that they felt that because of the district's involvement in redesigning school counseling, their initiative would be able to sustain after the grant period. So it's nice to see that others have recognized RSC's ability to sustain after the first year. Okay, and then a couple things about what the council's work is not. So we want the council to understand this is not an add-on program. We're looking at everything that's happening with the school counselors. We're going to figure out where the biggest bang for the buck is. We're going to keep the things that we think are most valuable, and we're going to toss the things that aren't as valuable so that we can get some more time. And we're going to do that always by looking at data and then having discussions. So it's not an add-on. It is a complete redesign. Some of the things we'll keep because they're working well, and then other things we'll tweak or we'll let go of as we look at what kids need and then design a program that's going to address those needs. It's also not a quick fix. If there were a quick fix, everybody would have already done it. So this is a process where we're going to discover what the program needs to be like, and we'll discover that again through data and through discussion. So it's not a quick fix, it's a process, it's a discovery process. And then finally, our work is not about reaching most students or many students, it's about reaching all students. And that's one thing that I think is going to be kind of different as you look at redesigning your program, is that we're wanting a program that will reach every student in the building, not just most or many, but all kids. So next question to answer for your council is, what's their role in all this? What do they do? So the first thing is to attend meetings. There are 5 this year. There will be 2 hours each. If you decide to adjust this, edit this part of the process, you'll need to edit this statement. But again, we strongly recommend a 2-hour meeting. So, okay. Then the other thing the council will do is they'll review data that you give them, both program data and student data. They'll participate in discussions, and this is another place where you can say, it's so important that each of you are here because you each have a unique perspective that you bring to the table, and if you're not here, that voice is missing. So we'll have discussions. There'll be, in-depth, deep discussions, which is why we really want that 2-hour meeting so we can go deep. And then the council will also be making foundation decisions. So we want the council to understand that they're not just there for a sit and get or to throw in their 2 cents, but they are going to work with you to make decisions about what are the benefits of school counseling, what's our vision for what we want kids to be like, what are the goals for our school counseling program, what are the things that are getting in the way, the root causes of those goals, and then what activities do we need the counselors to put in place to address those root causes. So we'll make all of those, they will work with you to make decisions about your school counseling program foundations. So those are their tasks. I like to also use the words to say that I tell my counselors that I work with, you're thinker bees. I'm going to be the worker bee. Our steering team will do the work, between our council meetings. We just need you to come to a council meeting, look at data, and then help us think through things from your perspective. Okay, this slide is a template where you could drop in your dates and times for your meetings, but you also have a handout template that you could use. If you use the paper handout, I would take this slide out. Okay, then that's the end of us speaking to the council. In the next part of the meeting, the council is going to be speaking to us. Sometimes in the first meeting, I like to say, I'm going to be doing a lot more talking at this meeting than I will at other meetings, because at the first meeting, there's just a lot I need to introduce. So now I'm in as the facilitator. We are in listening mode. Okay, so the first discussion is school counseling benefits. And again, this is an important discussion for your council to have. If they don't see a benefit to school counseling, why would they donate their time to work with you? So there's several purposes for this discussion, but one is that we want your council members to understand the benefit of their working with you. Okay, so in this discussion, so you're talking with your council. In this discussion, we're going to talk about the benefits of school counseling. We just finished defining what it is and what kind of work that counselors do. And we now want to talk about what are the benefits for students, counselors, teachers, parents, the business community, and the community in general. And we'll go through each one of those stakeholder groups one at a time and talk about the benefits for them. So we're saying to the council, this is going to be a brainstorm. The purpose of this brainstorm is to generate as many ideas as possible and to foster creativity. So in the process, when we're brainstorming, we want really quick answers, no discussion. There doesn't have to be any rationale for your answer. We're just getting answers out as quickly as possible, one after another, bing, bing, bing. There's no right or wrong answer. We're not judging, if answers are right or wrong. We're just getting out as many ideas as we can. And we're telling your council, this is going to be, when we make decisions in our council, we're going to do that by consensus. What that means is that everybody has to agree. And if we don't all agree, then we're going to stop and work and talk until we do all agree. So we're going to use a consensus building model called the Delphi Consensus Building Model. And we'll be using it all year. What that is that as the first step, whatever the question is, we'll give you a chance to just think about that privately without talking to others. So there's an individual brainstorm where you'll just jot down, or think about all the different responses to the question we're talking about. Then we'll break into small groups. Our small groups will be 3 or 4 members, maybe 5. And just as an aside to you, we really suggest not more than 5. The small group step of this is to make sure that everybody talks. So to get everybody talking, we did the individual brainstorm first, so everybody will have ideas and can share. So everybody had to think. And then in small group, if that group gets to be more than 5, people can hide. They just sit back and don't say much at all, and they let everybody else do the thinking and the talking. So we want to do individual thinking first, so everybody's had a chance to formulate what they might share. And then we're going into small groups where people can't hide. Everybody in a group of 3 or 4, everybody's going to have to talk. So, and then finally, after the small groups have done their work, then we'll go to large group, where the small groups will report out to the large group what's the, what they came up with. And at that point, we'll start scribing the different responses. So, okay. So next slide, we're asking your counselor to do their individual brainstorm first. Question is, what are the benefits of school counseling for each stakeholder group? And then this is part of their handout packet, so they're just going to bullet out and write down, what are the benefits for students? Well, counselors, they can talk to counselors when they have a problem. They can ask counselors for information about scholarships, whatever they come up with. We've given them some suggestions up here, so that if they, want some thoughts about, what they might write in here, they can do that as looking at the examples. So we give them maybe 5-7 minutes to just real quickly write some ideas down. I always emphasize that this is individual work, and I'll just bluntly say, and that means no talking, because typically when we're working with a group of adults and we give them a chance to work, within 30 seconds they're all talking to each other. So I'll just bluntly say, and that means no talking. And if they start to talk in the middle of this, I'll say, remember, individual work, no talking. So yeah. And then about halfway through the time, I'll say, half our time is up. If you haven't moved over to the parent column, let's kind of do that and make sure you have at least one idea written down in each of the columns. So that's that. So you've given them some time to just think individually, and then you're saying, okay, now let's break into small groups, and you've come up with a way to do that. And in your small group, please discuss the benefits of school counseling for each of the stakeholder groups, and then jot down on a piece of paper all the responses and be ready to share your ideas with a large group. So again, you're giving them 5-7 minutes to just kind of talk through that, and just as quickly they're getting down as many ideas as they can. And then in the large group brainstorm, you're saying, okay, let's come to large group, and then one idea at a time. Please share your small group ideas with the large group. And I say one idea at a time because if you don't, one group will say, okay, our first benefit was this, our second benefit was this, and before you know it, they've listed 20 benefits and they've taken up all of the whole group's time. So one idea at a time. And when I'm facilitating this, I'll usually start with one table, and I'll say, okay, give me one of your, let's facilitate the benefits for students. Give me one of your student benefits. And then they'll say that. And then I'll quickly move to another table. Okay, what's another one? And then I'll move to another table. What's another one? I also try to make my voice a little quicker and my sentences more choppy because I'm trying to emphasize, I want this to be quick, quick, quick. My other thing I like to do is when the small groups are working, I'll wander around the room. That's a good idea in general anyway, because then as you walk by a table, they can ask you a question. But as I'm wandering around, I'm picturing who is really having a good discussion. And I might lean over to a table and say, heads up, I'm going to call on you first. And could you role model for me that I'd like a short answer that's really, really quick, maybe 5 words, 7 words. Short answer, really quick. And then I might say that to a second table so that, I can really start out the discussion with bing, 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 a quick answer followed by a quick answer. By that time, everybody kind of sees how this is going to work with all these quick answers. Okay, and then the second part of the instruction to the large group is as ideas are being shared, please make a note if there's any idea that you couldn't live with or support publicly. That's going to be our consensus question later. And so we want people to be able to say, oh yeah, I can't live with that when we get to the consensus part of the discussion. Okay, so you're going through the large group brainstorm. You're starting out with the student benefits, and you go around until you've exhausted all the ideas. Then you're moving on to counselor benefits and teacher, parent, so you're working through the list. In the handouts, in the tools, there's a poster for each of these benefits. Each of the stakeholder groups, there's a poster. I like to put those posters up around the room before people come in because then they see, oh, there's posters, we're going to be talking, and people are going to be scribing, and okay, this is cool. So please know that there's the poster templates in the manual page. Okay, and then finally, our consensus check. Can each of us live with this, and can we support it publicly? And we're just asking people, think about everything that was just stated on these posters. Is there anything that you couldn't live with or support publicly? And I like to say, you don't have to love it, but could you live with it? And could you support it publicly? If someone says, yes, it really bothers me, and I could not support this benefit for students publicly, I think that's morally wrong. I think that should, one I've heard in the past is I think that should be the role of the parent, not a benefit that is to a parent benefit and not a counselor benefit, because I don't, believe that counselors should be doing that. So if anybody comes up with a negative, that benefit has to come off the list. So one thing you could do is just open it up for discussion. You could say, does anybody else have a problem with that benefit? Or does anybody feel strongly that it should be on the list? And just kind of open up that little discussion about the benefits, about why that benefit should be left on the list versus taken off the list. But if at the end of that discussion, someone says, oh, that benefit, I just can't live with it, I couldn't support it publicly, then you've got to take it off the list, even if it's something that you really, really like. So what will happen if you don't take it off the list? Nobody will trust that you really mean consensus when you talk consensus. Everyone will think if you don't like what they said, you'll just go on. If the group doesn't like what I said, they're just going to go on without me. They don't really, mean consensus. And why am I even participating in this council? So, and it's not just the person whose idea you left on the list. Everybody will be thinking that. So that's really important. I find it's easy to take something off of a list, even if something I really believe in, because I'll think, oh my gosh, there are 52 ideas written up here, and there are now 51 that we can all believe in. So yeah. The other thing that can happen is that between now and the next meeting, you could talk with that person, and you can always put it on the list at the next meeting, the list of benefits. You can always, bring that back up and say, okay, so-and-so, now sees what we were all saying, and he or she has agreed to put it on the list. But this consensus, if you don't honor it, you will lose everybody's trust. That's really, really important. Now, this said, we rarely have somebody take something off the list. I can't even remember a time that's ever happened. So you're probably not going to get into an issue with this one, but we just wanted to have this conversation now with you, because later there, in other discussions, there may be times when people want to take things off of the discussion. Okay, and then you're thanking people, and you're saying, thank you for all these ideas that you generated, all these 6 pieces of paper, and what a rich discussion. I'm so glad you were here and that we had all these voices at the table. So what's going to happen now is we're going to take all these posters, all these ideas. Our steering team will create a benefit statement from them, and then we'll send that back to you for your review. So, and then that's it. So, okay. So that's the walkthrough on the slides. I'm going to go back into the admin, into the RSC system. And this time I'm going to go to the process page. So I'm scrolling back up to the top, going on into the left navigation column. I'm going to click on process, and that brings up the process tab. And I'm going to scroll down to meeting 1. This is where you register for the meeting. This is where you can watch this webinar, or people on your steering team who are not here can watch the webinar. This is where you mark your leadership development attendance. So just go in here and just check off the people that either participated live in the webinar or have watched the archived webinar. Log counselor time use, that is exactly the same as you did it in the past month. Toward the due date, so maybe right before you leave for the holiday break, click submit so that we can check and make sure that we can verify that all of your counselors have logged during the month of December. So you wouldn't want to do that like on December 1st. So wait as long as you can into December before you submit that. Facilitate council meeting 1. This just is a link that will take you directly to the manual page where you can get all the tools. Enter the benefit statement. That's pretty easy. We just have a text box for each stakeholder group, and you would just write the benefits. We don't care if this is narrative or a bulleted list. Most of our schools use a bulleted list. Whatever you want to do is fine. If you're using a bulleted list, please use an asterisk to create as your bullet. Your computer will have lots of other different icons for bullets, but our online system will not recognize them. So please use an asterisk for bullets. Okay, so then this next section is something that is new. We'd like you to do so that we can kind of monitor visually what's happening in your school. So we're asking you to create an RSC Instagram account or a Twitter account. So in some districts, the district will create one account for the entire district. In most of our schools, each individual school just creates their own. So then we're going to post a photo of your meeting to your Instagram or Twitter account. And you will have, I guess I didn't show you that, in this section you will have told us what your Instagram username is, or your Twitter. Does not have to be both. We just need one of those. So then you're going to upload a photo to your account, and please use two different hashtags. One is hashtag redesigning school counseling. The other is hashtag redesigning school counseling, and then your school name, all lowercase, no spaces. So 4 words: redesigning school counseling, then the name of your school, 1 word for the name of your school. And that way, when we look at photos, or when you look at photos, you can look at photos for all of the schools across the country that are using redesigning school counseling, or you can just look at your own school's photos. That kind of creates a nice way to document in pictures your counsel. So, okay, and I wanted to show you, let me show you that. Here is an Instagram account, and actually if you wanted to look at photos, you could use hashtag redesigning school counseling or hashtag guiding all kids. The first year of guiding all kids is the same as RSC. So, and I just happen to be logged into the Guiding All Kids one. But one of the things you can do is you can look at what other schools have done. And this is something I thought was pretty cool. Here's a school that's doing the benefits statement. But for their Brainstorm, instead of having scribes write down everything that's reported out, they had each of the council members write down the benefits on sticky notes, and then they just posted them on posters that were up around the room. So parents, counselors, students, and then they talked about them in that way, and that's how they captured all the ideas. So I think that was really cool. And actually, this school did it first, and this school liked that idea, and so then they did it. So there's lots of photos in here. Scroll up real quickly. There's one that I have not talked to the school, but I'm dying to find out what they did with this. Here, this one. So somehow all the council responses got inside of this clear ball, and then they're tapping this, bouncing this ball around the council meeting. So so I thought that was pretty cool. So you can kind of see, what other people are doing, and this is another really interesting way. In this one, they had, instead of having somebody scribe, they had people rotate around to the different posters. So like after you do your small groups, you could have somebody representing the small group go up to the student page and write their benefit on the student page, on the student poster. Then somebody from the small group, a different person from the small group, could go to the counselor page and write the counselors up there, or write the benefits for counselors up there. So you would rotate people from poster to poster to poster. So so there's all different ways you could do this, and if you come up with a kind of unique way, please put a poster up. One thing that is not real helpful to us is to just see things like this. It doesn't give us any information where we're seeing a picture of one of our handouts as the photo that you're uploading. So please make sure that before your first meeting, you're prepared to take a photo of the group, and ideally the group working rather than the group posing. Again, like, this is wonderful. It kind of shows us, the number of people that are involved in their council, but it doesn't show us the action that's happening. So, okay, so that's that. I'm going to go back to the process page. The last thing to talk about is minutes. So I'm going to show you the entry for that. And you'll just type in your meeting, or indicate your meeting date. You use our calendar tool, who's writing the minutes, and then all of your council members will appear here. Just check off the ones that participated, and then our system will, when it prints minutes, it'll print who is in attendance at your council meeting, and then you just type in your minutes. So one idea, if you're meeting to do the first part of the meeting with councils from many schools together, one person could write the minutes for that section and then just email those minutes to each of the schools, and then the school just cut and paste those minutes here. So you might kind of do a title in here, district presentation, and then type in here a little summary of what was presented and so forth. And then you could do another heading, school discussion. That would be after you broke from the district meeting into school groups. So you might be meeting in an auditorium with all the councils for the presentation, and then you've broken into classrooms for your school discussion. And so then the school would enter in its individual minutes for the school part there. So, okay. Last thing is go back to meeting one. Last thing is the rubric items. These are pretty self-explanatory. Counselor time use submission, same rubric items. The benefit statement, we're basically saying, did you list benefits for each of the stakeholder groups? Did you create an Instagram account? Did you post a meeting? And does the post include both hashtags, redesigning school counseling and then redesigning school counseling plus school name? And then for minutes, the minutes, we want to contain the names of those present. That'll automatically happen along with their perspectives. And then we'll check, did the minutes summarize the meeting's activities and the discussions? Once in a while, we get minutes that have nothing to do with our purpose of the council meeting. And if that's the case, we would open up a discussion with you about, what happened to the discussion about student benefits. So, so just make sure that you've described what the discussion was all about. And then finally, this is really important. The minutes contain references to specific people who contributed ideas. So we want you to say, Jane Doe added that one benefit she sees to parents is, and then say that, or the person from your business community, Susie Smith, added that one benefit to the business community that she sees is blank. So we're not writing down everything that was said. We're just picking 2 or 3 statements, 2 or 3 contributions to the discussion, and we're going to list the person's name and then what they added to the discussion. So one of the reasons, actually the main reason that we're doing minutes, is so that people can see that you heard what they said, and that what they said was so important, you not only heard them, it ended up in the minutes. And even if I'm not Jane or Susie, I'm thinking, oh, they really listened. They put what folks said in the minutes. This, more than anything, we have found to be very, very helpful to getting people back to your next four meetings. Folks are so used to going to meetings that are just sit and gets, and this is really different. We're wanting to show people as quickly as we can that these meetings are about us listening to them rather than us talking to them. So this is really, really helpful. So, and again, just maybe pick 2 or 3 people from this meeting, and then the next meeting you can pick 2 or 3 different people. But we're just really wanting the people to see that this is a different kind of meeting. At these meetings, we're listening. So, okay. So that's it. If you have any questions or comments that you'd like to bring to our attention, please feel free to call Tina. We want to be here for you. Keep those submissions coming in. You guys have done a great job. For those of you who have not turned in your council roster yet or have not finished recruiting your council, you'll want to do that real quickly, because I know all of you have your first council meetings coming up in the next few weeks, next 2 or 3 weeks, probably 2 weeks. So we got to get that council roster completed and get people invited to your meetings so that they're there. So, okay, that said, call Tina if you need help, and thank you so much for participating in our Redesigning School Counseling.